Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here at the Spartan Rocketry Club, and I am to the point where I can put the decals on my Estes Great Goblin. So let's get to it. I've cut most of the decals out, and I've got a little custard cup here of warm to hot water. It's going to help things out. Just a last little trim here. The idea here is to cut them out without cutting into the colored part of the decal. There's not really any harm in trimming not particularly close because it's clear paper underneath. It's not like it's actually blue. So like this 3, I don't need to trim the little corners off. But I am going to trim this bit of excess. It's not super necessary, but I do like to have as little of that showing as possible. I'm going to start with the biggest one here. This is just a strip that's going to go around the midsection of the rocket, and it is pretty big. So it kind of barely fits, but that's fine. The goal here is to work as quickly as possible because the hot water only stays hot, of course, for a limited amount of time. And, you want to make the most out of the time that you have. So, fewer trips to the hot water, the better. To figure out where these things go, you're going to have to break out the box. Here's the box. So the black strip is going to go a little bit above the fins. Most of these decals do go on the fins, although there are a couple of bats that are just going to be kind of like randomly splattered around the tube. So this should be probably loose enough. I want it still to have a little bit of grip to it. Like this is just about perfect, probably. So I'm going to get started. So these decals are pretty notorious for curling up on themselves, so do try to avoid that. I did have it kind of peel off a little bit there, but I more or less straightened it out. So this one's just going to go around the body tube, so I'm going to turn the rocket rather than doing anything with the decal. I'm just gently pulling on it as I turn. Hopefully this will line up reasonably well. I suspect that it probably will not line up perfectly well, but the nice thing about having a waterslide decal versus a sticker decal is that they're easy to adjust. So this wasn't perfect. It's not bad, but they obviously don't line quite up. So I'm going to wet my fingers here a little bit and try to move both pieces. I think I'm going to pick up the bottom. And that is a little torn, so I got to be extra careful with that. And I'm going to try to align the bottom a bit. Alright, so that looks decent. Now this is not perfectly straight, so I'm going to have to readjust things as I go, which is certainly something that we can do. It's not that bad. Again, keep your fingers wet, because if they're not, that's likely when things are going to tear. And this did stick particularly well, so more than I was expecting. If you do end up getting bubbles that you need to dig out or you need to get under there, using the hobby knife is a good way, not because you want to cut it, because you really don't, but because the hobby knife is thin and can fit under things nicely without damaging them. Alright. So I'm just going to use a little bit of water to kind of moisten this so I can move it a little bit better. Maybe moving, an inch or so at a time. Getting close to the end, so that's good. This is surprisingly, it stuck surprisingly well, more than I expected to the tube. I'm not sure if that's because of, the paint might have been stickier than usual, or who knows what, but typically they move better than this. Alright, I'm getting close to the end. I'm actually going to turn the blade around so I'm not accidentally cutting anything. Alright, so I'm just going to pick this up carefully because I know it is torn. Just a little bit there at the end. And this should line up pretty well now that I've smoothed most of it out. Alright, that's decent. Alright, so let's put the blade back on the hobby knife so nothing stupid happens. I'm now going to use a paper towel here to smooth it out the rest of the way. And I'm going to go kind of backwards to the direction that I had been applying it. And that should take care of the wrinkles. And if there are any air bubbles in there, I should be able to get them out as well. Pulling it a little bit tight with my fingers there to get the wrinkles, because there are some wrinkles in here, to get them out. And I'm back to the start. And I just want to be careful with this, how it's lined up. Because again, I know it tore right at the end, and I'm not entirely sure why that happened in particular. I mean, it does happen. It's just, oops. It's just something to be aware of. The good news is that most of these have enough overlap so that you're not really going to notice it. So it's pretty close. I can live with that. Alright, I'm not going to apply all the decals in this run, but we'll apply a few of them. So I have a big old goblin here. This thing barely fits in my water, which by the way is already getting a little on the tepid side. So, you know, what are you going to do? So I think what I'll do is I'll apply like one of each of these major ones, and the rest of them I'll do on my own time. By the way, the paint job for this was yellow paint. I don't know what the deal is with it, but I guess it's probably just because it's a light color. It doesn't tend to cover well, and it takes a lot of coats. So this took 3 coats of yellow paint in order to get to a reasonably good finish. The first one, you could clearly see the white through it, which is no good. And even after the 3rd coat, there's still some inconsistency up here in the color at the very end. It's not terribly noticeable unless you get really close to it, so a 4th coat might have been warranted. I chose against doing that because I got a few runs in the paint. And you know, the more times you have to apply the paint, the more likely that is to happen. So I'd like to keep that to a minimum. Anyway, so I'm going to put, it doesn't really matter, you know, where these go, but they go, you know, on the fins. So every other one has a goblin. The other ones have the big old number 3. I don't know why it's a number 3, but it is. So I'm going to just hold down the goblin's feet here and pull out the paper. That one seemed to go pretty well. He seemed to adhere pretty well. I don't see any major bubbles, but I'm still going to take the time to smooth the decal out. Oops. Well, that's not great. A little bit tore here. If you do end up getting tears like this, you can usually kind of like jigsaw it back together if you want to try. I mean, honestly, do you really need to try? Probably not. No, it's hard to notice, but might as well. But when you are working with a little tiny piece like this, it does tend to fold up on itself, and you know, it can get pretty messy pretty fast. Alright, I can live with that. I'm just going to tap here to blot off the excess water, and we'll say that's good. What else we got? We have a big old goblin. This is going to go on the other set of fins, so it goes just kind of like so. So I'm going to put my thumb on the G and then pull the paper out. That should work reasonably well. This one also needs to have a little bat near it. So I'm going to get that good to go. And I'm going to carefully blot down here to get, there was a little bit of a bubble in there. That's pretty much taken care of, so like that. And then there's a little goblin, or not goblin, little bat that's supposed to go right above the N in goblin. That's clever, I guess. So, see if that's loosened up enough. Yeah, that loosened up pretty well. I'm also going to throw one of these number 3s in here while I'm working on it. And like I said, the bat is supposed to go more or less right above the N. That looks decent. It did fold over a little bit on itself, but not noticeably so. Alright. I'm also going to put one of these Estes ones on here. You know, it's your rocket, of course. I guess it's nice to give Estes credit for the design, so I usually do put those on, but you know, if you don't feel like doing the free advertising for Estes, by all means don't. And of course, you can put the decals on however you want. If you don't want to put them on at all, then don't. You know, it's your rocket. The finishing process is totally up to you. I tend to try to make mine look as much like the box as possible, but I'm also the kind of person who will only build the Lego design that is in the instructions. So, you know, I'm not going to say that I'm not a creative person, but if you're a person who doesn't feel constrained by the instructions, then by all means, you do you. You know, do as you please. Alright. Yeah, that's okay. The instructions do make it look like the box art anyway. It makes it look like this is supposed to be pretty well centered. I think I'm actually going to move it out a little bit. More like that. Alright, and last but not least, these little Estes decals, they're supposed to be kind of mid-fin here. And yeah, I guess like my thumb dried up a little bit because it got stuck there. So always a good idea to keep your fingers moist when you're doing this, or damp if you prefer, because it's when things get stuck. That's when things start to tear, and we don't like that. Alright, I guess I'm going to throw one more of these bats in here. Like I said, the bats are supposed to go, I don't know, just kind of randomly up on the body tube. So I only have 2 extras because I figure one will go on the other goblin. So, you know, one here and one here or something like that. That seems to be generally what the instructions are calling for. But again, you put them wherever you want. It's your rocket. And since they are kind of haphazardly being added anyway, it hardly matters. Okay. Just tap that, blot it a little bit, and we'll say that's pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to do the rest of the decal application off camera. It's just more of the same. After this is done, it's going to dry for a bit, probably, you know, several hours, maybe overnight, and then I'm going to put a clear coat on it. There is still a decent amount to do after that, so I will see you in the next video, which might be the last, and might not. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching. I'll see you then.